Hello and welcome back to the Shrink Ray Challenge. If you didn't see the last video, I'll explain how it works. The idea of this challenge is to resize pixel art drawings, but still retain the general idea of the artwork. The challenge is successful if the smallest image is still recognizable as what I was initially trying to draw. Today, I will be attempting to draw a city at 64x64, 48x48, 32x32, 16x16, and 8x8 pixels. I started with the sky and drew in a solid white circle for the sun, adding some faint clouds. Then I worked on the buildings that would be furthest away, creating some details like antennae and small bridges. I made a new layer and used a similar process for the next row of buildings with a slightly darker colour to show the distance between the two layers. I also threw in a couple of birds on the right. On another layer, I created a much bigger building in the foreground with a sign attached to it, and drew in some details. I wanted some kind of elevated railway system because I thought it would make the scene look more futuristic, so I drew in a bridge for the train to travel across. I made the train similar to the subway trains that many cities currently have because I didn't want the scene to look too distant in the future. Then, I experimented with another building in the foreground, but realized that on the smaller versions it would become distracting and would mix in with the rest of the drawings. I added a couple more lights, cleaned up the background, and the 64x64 illustration was complete. Now, it was onto the 48x48 pixel drawing. Again, I began with the sun in the background. The sizing was similar to the 64x64 canvas, so there wasn't too much downscaling to do. I worked through this version the same way as the first, and soon enough it was done. The scene began to fall apart at the 32x32 pixel drawing, because the limited number of pixels didn't do the details of the first drawing justice. I still managed to block in the background buildings and draw the sun. The train was pretty difficult to draw because it could only be 2 pixels tall at this scale. I think without the context of the first drawing, it'd be hard to see what this was trying to be. Now, the 16x16 drawing. At this scale, the buildings became very representational, and a lot of the details were lost. This time, the train was 1 pixel high, so the detail on it was very minimal. The final drawing is almost unrecognizable, but it was a pretty fast process. And finally, 8x8 pixels. This drawing was so small, and at this scale, it's impossible to get any details. The end result was more of an abstract representation than an exact replica of the 64 pixel drawing. I placed the last pixels, and with that, the challenge was done. Let's take a look at the finished results. While they're definitely not perfect, I think they turned out alright. Again, the limit seems to be 32x32, and the last two are just too small. Thanks for watching the second episode of the Shrink Ray Challenge, and be sure to check out the first if you haven't already.